Welcome to the June 27th edition of the PFF Forecast. Yes, my voice is it's not in the best shape that it's ever been in, but I feel great. I'm here to power through. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a great episode today because we're going to talk about the College Football Preview Magazine, PFF's College Football Preview Magazine that drops Monday. We're recording this on a Sunday evening. It will drop Monday. We'll talk about what's inside, some of the good stuff there that you can take away and place some bets with, which of course is our main motivation. And then we've got a little Steelers conversation because, well, they did something. And so we have to talk about it because people are going to want to hear it. And then we'll close out with some quarterback rankings and talking about Lamar, Baker, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. Which of these quarterbacks might we see get a really big deal? What does that mean? All that stuff. Anyways, let's go. Eric, you're gonna have to do some talking during this podcast.
Well, I felt like you should have waited until this week to win the Emmy, so I could have done the intro because you were laboring there, brother. But yeah, I don't think it was in vain. You had a good weekend in Vegas. It sounded like you gave back, let's just say, and you got some and you got some coming your way as well. So that's terrific. But yeah, it'll be a fun show.
I'll tell the story of yesterday in Vegas at the end of the podcast. I'll save it for the end of the podcast. It's a really good story. There's a reason that I cannot speak very well, but it's a great reason, and it's betting focused, so it'll be a lot of fun. I'll save that for the end. I'll try and remember. You, however, again, for a second straight podcast, aced the look. You've got your light. You've got it, and I'm still here in a hotel looking like a doofus, but I'm getting shown up in multiple ways now. I don't know how I'm going to take it. I'm going to need to really internalize it and figure my life out.
Did you notice here I have this Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls Matryoshka behind me?
Yeah.
Not to both screw with your basketball love, but also yeah. And I've
Who's
been
on the Wheaties? Who's on the Wheaties box?
Kirby Puckett. So I grew up in Minnesota. I think the contrary to what Vikings fans think, the last time a team other than the Minnesota Lynx won a championship in Minnesota was 1991. And so I have something commemorating that.
I have no comment. Let's start off with this. If you are listening to this on Sunday evening, Monday morning, I could probably listen to it on Monday morning. The 2021 College Football Preview Magazine will be live on PFF.com. You can get it. It's only $7.99 with a college football grade subscription. Just $7.99. You can download it and have it for the entirety of the season. There's a ton of good stuff in here. It's like 650 pages. You have everything from results of the simulations for college football down to Seth Galina's scheme analysis for each coach. Anthony Tresh and the whole college team wrote a ton of great stuff on the different best pass catchers, best defenders, quarterback breakdowns. So there's a ton of good stuff. I want to ask you, Eric, what's your favorite?
Well, I still think it's a lot of good stuff. Obviously, the simulation coming from our group, Timo Risky's passing maps, which I think are really cool and something you don't really get to see at the college level. Could obviously help you with your draft prep as well. I like how in depth. I like how in a calendar year we've been able to get so many what I would consider to be experts in the college football realm, and Tresh and Galina, Deontay Lee. We've gotten people who really know the college game, and that's really shining here. I've been, not as big of a college fan as an NFL fan, but I've been a college fan for a while. And I got to say, after surveying, this is the best college football preview you're going to get. And I think what it also does is, when you have the results of the simulation, basically, you're going to be able to look at sort of your favorite team. You're going to be able to see betting markets, whether it be DraftKings or wherever you can see those, and you're gonna be able to sort of put a wager that is backed by a simulation here. So I like that as well.
Yeah, that's kind of that's obviously like my favorite part. I do think that the route maps are really cool. We do these for both for quarterbacks and the top pass catchers. So you can look at that, and that I think is really interesting, right? Because you see where the quarterback threw the football, where the top pass catcher actually ran the routes that we'd expect them to be targeted on, and that I think is really cool. Let's talk about some bets that you could potentially make. You're going to sell me on them because, as you know, college football aficionado right here. I'm here to learn. So give me some of your favorites based on the simulation results that you can find in the College Football Preview magazine.
Yeah, I think one of our biggest fades this year is the Big 12, specifically Iowa State. And I think a big beneficiary of that is going to be Texas Tech. We like over 4.5 for them. It's minus 152. So it's kind of a true 5, but we have it a little bit over, almost like 5.5 wins for them. So that's one that we like. Another one out your way, George. Mm-hmm. This one's tough to sort of do because we do like a lot of the characters out there, but UCLA under 7 at minus 121. This is one I think that's either going to be over by the first half of the year if Dorian Thompson-Robinson plays extremely well for them, and the recruits that UCLA has garnered over the past few years. If those all hit, this is going to be sunk. If they don't, specifically at the QB position, if the quarterback does not sort of play to his potential as he hasn't for the first 3 years, there's such a tough schedule out west for UCLA. I think they go under that one. And then lastly, this is again another quarterback bet. I think I've said this to you many a Saturday where you have taken a Sabbath during the season on Saturday, and my degenerate ass is watching football. Sean Clifford sucks. And I don't think he's going to make that Joe Burrow type ascension that everybody believes. Because Burrow was like average the year before he became the number 1 pick. Mm-hmm. But I like Penn State under 9 at minus 125.
Yeah, the UCLA one is interesting because there's been projection with them, especially at the quarterback position, just like nonstop, and it just like doesn't actually pan out. The Penn State Nittany Lions. As well, I feel like are a team that they also, well, first off, they've lost a lot of good players, right? Jason Away, Pat Fryermuth. But from a quarterback perspective, again, you like always see this projection. I think that in college football is the interesting thing. It's like if you want to try and be right about projecting which quarterback breaks out, I think it's completely, there's so many things you don't know, like trying to make that projection and bet an over because of it is crazy to me. So I like the idea of just saying, look, on average, they're all, they're not all going to break out. So let's go ahead and actually, root ourselves in some data here and fade those teams a little bit. Both Sean Clifford and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, PFF grades of 66 or below last year. So, I don't know.
And especially out of the Big Ten, like I'm more, hopeful for Thompson-Robinson just because like Chip Kelly is a good coach and all that kind of stuff. Mm. I mean, the Big Ten, Justin Fields was always good. I feel like we've always been waiting for the Brian Lewerkes and the Tanner Morgans and like all these other terrible, like middle of the pack sort of like Big Ten quarterbacks to emerge as the next great guy. And it just never happens. And I think with Clifford, the Big Ten is just, I think, too difficult of a conference for these quarterbacks to sort of emerge if they weren't already as good as Fields was.
That James Franklin shade, by the way, their offense last year, the Nittany Lions, 65th in EPA per pass play, 76th in EPA per run play. Like their offense wasn't good.
They lost to Maryland as like 21-point favorites or something like that. I think that they, they're just not particularly good. If you want to back a team in the Big Ten that's not Ohio State, go for Iowa. I think Iowa's better than a lot of people believe they are.
Ooh, any players there that I should be looking out for? Or do they have some great tight ends that we can root for?
No, they did lose Mekhi Sargent, but the other running back they bring back, I'm missing on his name, also had extremely good like yards after contact sort of stuff. They started the season last year 0-2, and both losses were by like a field goal, and then they won 6 consecutive games to close the season, which I think has their ELO pretty high. But the other thing is their last game was canceled, and then their bowl game was canceled. I do think they're being sort of forgotten about because they only played 8 games last year, but their last 6 games were all wins, and all but one of them was by 2 scores or more. So they had a pretty solid season last season, despite all the limitations that come with being Iowa, which is like quarterback and athleticism on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, they one of the cool things that you can see in the preview magazine is different unit rankings. So Iowa, as you very astutely alluded to, very, very bad in terms of quarterback and receiving, 13th and 12th out of 14 in the Big Ten, respectively. But from an offensive line perspective and in the secondary, tremendous. They may have, one of the best secondaries, if not the best secondary in the Big Ten, and a great offensive line. So there are some things there to like. Okay, we've maxed out on college.
Hey, honestly, I'm proud of you. You took way more time, but I do know that, especially, I mean, these are people that in your group, I can't be more impressed with the product they put out, and hopefully all of you that take a look at it are equally as impressed. So
yeah, ton of great work by a lot of people. I mentioned Seth, I mentioned Anthony, Andrew Russell's the guy that puts the whole thing together and does a tremendous job there. Obviously, the entire editorial team, Mark Chichester, Austin Gale, who does a little bit of everything in terms of putting this thing together. So definitely go check it out. If you already have a PFF subscription, go take a look. If you don't already, just $7.99 and you can download it and have it for the entirety of the season. All right, let's move on to let's do a little Steelers conversation first. We'll get to quarterbacks at the end of this. We were talking to our buddy Evan Silva, and he was like, I'm getting just absolutely bogged down by Steelers maniacs in my mentions right now. And this tends to happen a lot because the Steelers make a decision, and it's kind of a sign, it's a symbol of where the organization is heading, where the team is heading. People call it out, and Steelers fans are not happy about it. So David DeCastro gets cut and goes sign Trey Turner. David DeCastro actually, Eric, was like, he's been really, really good. So this may seem like, oh, they just cut a guard, but like David DeCastro has been a key contributor to that team and an offensive line that generally was really good when the Steelers were really good.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Steelers in a nutshell. From 2013 to 2019, David DeCastro earned 1.32 WAR, which is 4th among guards. He was a good football player. He has the same name now that he had in 2013 and 2019, much like Big Ben. And much like Big Ben last year, DeCastro was a little bit above replacement level. Obviously, he had the injuries. And, this entire season for the Steelers was hinging on basically, taking these players who have names for them and trying to get them to do the exact same thing that they did between 2013 and 2019. And DeCastro, it didn't even take, you hate to see this, but it didn't even take to the season before that sort of blew up in their face at this offensive line position. And this is the one part of their offensive line that, they thought that they were going to have some stability in, right? And, they, not to mention, the tackles and stuff like that. So it's a tough scene for them. Hopefully, they can get some production there, but yeah, the Najee Harris Rookie of the Year train already with a little bit of a flat tire here.
Yeah, well, that was always the thing, that we talked about.
The bus, let's call it, not the train. Trains don't have tires.
He great running back, but like he's gonna have to run somewhere, and that necessitates blocking. It's interesting. You look at the AFC North odds again, and it feels like a pretty, in the market, there's this really huge gap between the Bengals and the Steelers. The Steelers are closer to, the Ravens and the Browns, the two favorites, than they are the Bengals. And I know that this is clearly, Eric, a result of, well, hey, the Steelers always figure it out. They always find a way, right? And you mentioned that, getting that kind of priced into how you project them going forward. But they came into Cincinnati last year and got beat down by a team without Joe Burrow. And I'm wondering if there really is that big of a gap between the Steelers and the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals have a better quarterback. That matters a crap ton. The Steelers' offensive line is horrible. So if you want to sit here and tell me, well, the Bengals have a bad offensive line, well, okay. And your point is, the Bengals have better receivers. And then you look at the defense, you go, okay, well, the Steelers is where they have the big advantage. Yes, but defense is also something that is super volatile from season to season. And the Cincinnati Bengals, they have some players there that are improving. Jesse Bates, highest graded safety in the NFL last year. I'm kind of talking myself into, like, if I could do a head-to-head prop, I don't know what the Bengals odds would be, but I think I would take the Bengals to win more games than the Steelers next year, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I think we would probably, I'm trying to look, I think we'd probably make that closer to even money. You're probably going to get, Steelers 8.5 wins, Bengals somewhere around 6. You might end up with, maybe a plus. I'm trying to think of how many, plus 250. That would certainly be one of the better bets of the offseason, I think. Obviously the one place where the Steelers have a humongous advantage is at head coach, I think, right now with Tomlin over Zach Taylor. But at the same time, like, Zach Taylor's coaching for his job. Tomlin's really not, so, it might close the gap a little bit, but yeah, I think when you grade out the players in the most important positions, I think the Bengals are a lot closer to the Steelers than what many will believe.
Yeah. I mean, our simulation results, and you can go check this out on pff.com, look at our win totals tracker, and we you can go look at exactly what our projection is and the percentage of the time that a team goes over their win total, under the win total. And you'll see, look, it's a neck and neck right there between the Bengals and the Steelers for the third spot in that division. But yeah, man, you never want to be, I would rather be a little early on a team than be the person sitting behind going, no. You forget about the history of the Steelers. It's like, okay, let's let bygones be bygones, and, like, let's look at what they actually are right now. And that's why I think, look, maybe it's a year early. Who knows? Okay, but Steelers did kind of fall apart last season. I like the direction that the Bengals are heading. I would absolutely make that bet at plus 250. You can go find someone who's a Steelers fan and bet them that the Bengals will have more wins than the Steelers and get plus 250 odds.
Yeah, that should be an obvious smash if you like that one. But yeah, look, I think it's crazy to me. This is the one thing that I don't get, and I guess we live in America in 2021. So what should we expect? But, like, 11-0, we talk about they're overrated. They go 1-4 down the stretch, 1-5 down the stretch, and like, I feel like that should be enough proof. But, like, we just apparently live in a society where, like, nothing matters. Like, anything can happen. You can still, like, you're able to hold your opinion. And I feel like if fans aren't going to come around on the Steelers after how it ended last year, then I guess there's just really no hope, especially given that, like, not only did they go with Harris, but they didn't even get, like, a value pick in that sort of second spot either with Freiermuth. They went and got, like, Mark Bruner of old Steelers fame.
Yeah, the draft was confusing.
An atrocity, I thought.
Confusing to me. Well, this was a nice segment to just remind, we have a couple of loyal Steelers fans that listen to the podcast. Shout out to you guys. Being a realist for a team that, like, is not particularly, it doesn't have a lot of hope, is tough. So, this is really more about a conversation to, like, make sure that you're level setting correctly, or trying to. And that's what we're trying to do, right? It's not like we're trying to, like, I want to dog on this team. Let's, like, find a way to do so. It's more about trying to be ahead of the curve in terms of, where our team's heading. And often that will get a negative reaction because it's new and it's different and it's saying that a team that's generally been good or generally been bad is all of a sudden heading in a different direction. But that happens all the time. It really does. Before we get into the quarterback discussion, I want to tell you about Symbol. I've told you about the PFF College Football Preview Magazine, which you can get for just $7.99 with a PFF College Grades Plus subscription. But you take all those great insights and go to Symbol, and Simbull, and you can buy shares of college football teams. Yes, it's real. You can actually put money into shares of sports teams at Symbol, simbull.app/PFF. Use the promo code PFF. When you deposit $10 or more, you will get a free PFF Edge annual subscription, which comes with, guess what? College Football Preview Magazine. So I've laid it all out there for you. It cannot get any easier. I'm sure Eric is selling plenty of Penn State shares because I know he went all in last year. But you can go buy whichever ones you want, and then when your team wins, you get paid dividends, or you can trade them. If the price goes up accordingly. Go to Symbol, simbull.app right now. And now the quarterback section. Moving right along, we've got some conversation about 3 quarterbacks, and we'll lump in a 4th here. But the group of quarterbacks that are coming up for potential contract extensions: Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, obviously all drafted in the same draft, have had very interesting career arcs. Mayfield, the most impressive of that group as a freshman, right? As a rookie. Lamar Jackson obviously then wins the MVP next year. And then this last year, Josh Allen is the guy that comes out and is like, hey, is this guy in the Mahomes Watson, conversation? That's how good he looked at times. And so for all of those reasons, all 3 of them are very much in the, okay, are they going to get a mega extension from their team? And also the teams that are making these decisions, this thing I find the most interesting, Eric, are 3 teams that if we said the most analytically sound teams in the NFL, the Browns, the Ravens, and the Bills would all be there in one order. That might be the order. You could argue it'd be reversed. And so it'd be very fascinating to see what happens. How do you kind of break this down?
Yeah, I think you really did a good job of summarizing sort of like the cyclicalness of this entire thing. Because last season, so over the course of 3 seasons, Mayfield has generated about 7 WAR, Lamar Jackson almost 4, and like Allen a little bit, about 3.7. So, but then last season that like order kind of flipped. Allen was the 5th most valuable player in football last year, and then Baker Mayfield was sort of in that 9th range, which is actually where he's been the last 3 years. And Lamar Jackson was 17th, which is where he's been over the past 3 years as well, more or less. And again, like you see the ebbs and flows. Lamar, one of the most valuable players in football in 2019, won the MVP award, kind of regressed a little last year. And so you can kind of see already like some of the reasons why you look at Brad Spielberger's projections for them, they're all in that 4-year 165 range. Actually, Jackson's 166, Allen 168, Mayfield 165. If you look at Spielberger's projections, and I think he's looking at Allen's last most year as the reason why he might be the best of the bunch. But for him, the arc has been pretty steadily increasing. Whereas with Baker and Lamar, it's been a little bit of sort of like an oscillatory sort of situation for them. And that brings up the question then, like, do you really want to give that humongous contract to that player? Because like the guys who I think are stone cold locks for that position, right? Mahomes, Rodgers, let's think about, Brady, Matt Ryan, even I'd say Deshaun Watson, like those guys, Watson Dak. Prior to the issue. Yeah. And even Dak had the oscillate. I mean, I love Dak and we'll rate quarterbacks here in a second, but I still think it remains to be seen whether Dak can win with a $40 million contract, right? Because he's going to have to overcome quite a bit. And all of the quarterbacks I described were sort of monotonically increasing, or at least like in the case of Mahomes, amazing right away and mostly able to sort of maintain that. Whereas these guys, it hasn't necessarily been that way. Baker was extremely good in 18, not so good in 19. And started slow last year, but really came on strong. And so then, like, the question is, if you're going to give out 40 something million dollars to these guys APY, they have to be impervious to a lot of these things, or you're going to have seasons where you simply can't compete with the Kansas Cities of the world. And that, like, I'm sort of skeptical that can be the case in all these cases, except for, I think, Josh Allen, to be honest with you.
So that was going to be my next question. So if you're thinking about, you have to give out a contract extension to one of these guys, it is Allen for you?
If I only could give out one, I would give one out to Josh Allen, I think. And I like Mayfield a lot. I even think I gave the answer Mayfield when I was just talking about this, and I sort of more thought it through. To me, I think it's Allen, and then I think it's a tie between the other two guys.
So I think I would side Allen as well, because your goal is to win a Super Bowl. And if you think about getting to the Super Bowl and winning it, and the type of play that you need from the quarterback position, I think the chances that Josh Allen is capable of that are higher, right? You think about the ability to just make plays both in the structure that he showed last year, but then out of structure. That being said, we saw 3 seasons of Josh Allen, 2 of which he's been wildly inaccurate. Inaccurate. And yes, I absolutely believe he improved a lot, and I want to believe he improved a lot. And there's not going to be some massive amount of regression, but it's a little concerning, right? You don't see this happen often at all. And you look at Mayfield and you go, okay, well, he has had horrible situations in Cleveland. Hugh Jackson, Freddie Kitchens, finally gets Kevin Stefanski. And then you go, okay, but wait, Kevin Stefanski's so great, and like that's a red flag. So I think that's how I'd separate Allen and Mayfield is. I think Mayfield right now, it's hard to believe that he is truly going to be able to do it on his own is the wrong term, but like you see this with Kyle Shanahan, he puts together a beautiful scheme. Still, the quarterback has to go win it, right? And you probably feel a little bit better about Allen than Mayfield there. And then Lamar Jackson is interesting because he has the skill of the 3 of them that's the most unique and the most biggest differentiator in the league. But are you confident that you can win a Super Bowl and win multiple games in the playoffs with that level of passing accuracy? Because that it means that from a running perspective, you have to be healthy throughout, right, to make all those things work. And we saw what happened last year when they didn't have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think with Lamar, I think I said this on the last show, like they played, their offense is more defensive like in the sense it requires more things to be good in order to be great. And unfortunately, we're already to the point where, like, the Ravens the last 2 seasons have spent about 2/3 of their cap dollars on defense and about 1/3 on offense. And so they've been sort of like padded a little bit with all of the rookie deals that they've been able to give out to the Stanleys and the Browns and the Lamar Jacksons and so on and so forth. And once you start to shift the balance of power, there is their defense continuing to be amazing in that spot. And again, I think you brought up a great point at the very beginning, which is the goal here is to compete for the AFC Championship. And so, like, it's not just good enough. Like, I think there was like a blog about like the Stefanski thing and how the article we wrote underrated him relative to Reed because he outcoached Reed in the AFC divisional game. And it's like, I mean, Reed won that game. Like, the Browns weren't even able to score 20 points in a game where Chad Henne played half the time. Like the bar is really high to beat Andy Reid and Mahomes. And you look other places in the AFC, and the Chargers have one of the best young up-and-coming coaches, and they have a quarterback on the 2nd year of his rookie deal who appears to be extremely talented. The Bengals have Joe Burrow. The Dolphins have a great coaching staff and a great front office with a young quarterback. Like, once you sacrifice the advantage of a rookie deal, like, you stop comparing Lamar and Baker and Josh Allen to the Tuas of the world and the the Justin Herberts of the world, and they start getting compared to the Mahomeses of the world. And you can come back and say that's not fair, but I absolutely think it's fair if you're making that much money. And that's where the scoreboard's going to be. And teams that have signed quarterbacks to humongous deals that were veterans who were in that sort of range. The Rams are going to find that out this year. The Vikings have found it out the last 3 years. Like the bar is different, and that's where you're going to be judged. And I think some of them are going to be judged harshly on that curve.
Yeah, look, that's the facts. That's how. That's the reason you sign a guy to an extension like this. Is you go, this is the guy, right? That's what that says.
It's what it should say, George, right? But like the issue is more often than not, right? These are people who are trying to save their jobs or to justify themselves to their bosses. Sure. And usually it's less of I think I can win long term with this guy. And it's more of, I bought myself more time with this deal, and I'm hanging a banner because I drafted a quarterback which is viewed as risky, and he ended up turning out okay for me.
But that's what's so interesting here, Eric, is I don't think that's the case with these three teams in the sense of, look, Andrew Berry's been amazing. Brandon Beane has been amazing. And Eric DeCosta and the Ravens are an organization that does not make, none of these guys are hoping that they keep their job here. But what I think is the interesting dynamic is all three of these guys, and I would rank them actually differently from this perspective, are the face of a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about answering to your owner, right? And that's the super interesting thing here is like, yep. Okay, look at what happens if you give the guy this big deal and then he turns into Carson Wentz or Jared Goff. Like you put your team in hell. But the risk of getting rid of the guy that is the reason people buy jerseys and show up to the stadium, that is an economic component that is very near term and hard. So when you're sitting there and you're going like, I don't know, and there's all this pressure economically from an owner, and owners are successful people in the world, right? It's not like you're, hearing this just from some beat reporters or something. And so I would say from that perspective, the one most likely to get the extension, I think, is Lamar, because of the fact that he won the MVP. That Lamar Jackson is a massive, massive, massive part of that franchise. I think Alan.
I see it completely differently.
Really?
And again, this was Ozzie Newsome. This wasn't Eric Acosta, but like when they won the Super Bowl with Flacco, they had to basically cut all of their players and sign Flacco to a humongous deal because, it was sort of that like, well, we have to type of thing, And I do think that creeps in. And when you have discussions with people that work within teams, like that's exactly the reality they live with. That's what the Cowboys had to live with Zeke. That's certainly what the Vikings dealt with Dalvin Cook. We need to have faces of the franchise. When we're on Monday Night Football, there needs to be somebody who's next to the graphic, right? Like that's it. But I think that situation is more acute when talking about a Buffalo team that has made the playoffs back-to-back years for the first time since Jim Kelly, like, right, the last face of the franchise. Like Josh Allen is the Buffalo Bills, right? Like there's no like doubt about it. And you had people we know say, when Deshaun Watson's name was coming up in trade talks, we are not trading Baker Mayfield for Deshaun Watson, even though I think it's pretty clear that Baker's not as good as Deshaun when Deshaun, taking away his off the field stuff. And again, that's a quarterback who's taken the team to the playoffs for just the second time since 1994. So like, I think for those two franchises having been so down for so long, for decades, the quarterback that has risen them up to relevance, I think is more the face of the franchise than Lamar, who's been terrific, but for a franchise that has been one of the model ones in the NFL with Joe Flacco, with Steve McNair, with Trent Dilfer back in 2000. And like, that's the way I see it. But I think obviously Lamar being an MVP clouds that judgment as well, for sure. Yeah,
that to me is the kind of the one that puts him over the top. I mean, that matters. Man, it's tough because I agree with you, right? Like there's a reason we're talking about these guys in this regard. I just think if you think about the Ravens and their sustained success and the fact that they brought Lamar in and put a lot of faith in building an offense around him and it worked so well, that season was uniquely magical in the way that I think even though Allen's is more recent, wasn't as as impressive. So that's how we break that tie. But I think Baker is clearly third there in the sense that when he's good, people rally around him and they love him. But he has certainly not, in my opinion, reached the point where it's fans are going to die for this guy. I think they really want to see the Browns succeed. If there was one that I don't think happens, this year, it's Baker.
Yeah, which is interesting considering Baker has been the most consistently okay or better, right? Obviously, by virtue of the most wins above replacement of any of those guys. But you're right, like the top end play, you really have. So the top end play is apparent with Baker, but you really have to squint to see it. You have to look past the fact that the Browns didn't score all that many points against the Chiefs in the playoffs. You have to look past the fact that despite the Pittsburgh game was fluky last year in the playoffs, but Baker played really well within that fluky game. The 3 weather games last year, the game with no wide receivers, by the way, Baker threw for 300 yards. I mean, he, playing a whole season without Odell mostly, obviously the kitchen stuff. I think Baker, in a world where there isn't such a humongous gap between rookie deal. So think about this, if this was 2008, right? And the Browns had to trade. So let's say they trade Baker for a few first round picks to a team, right? Let's say Detroit. They get all those first round picks back. And they go to the well and they draft a quarterback and they have to pay him what the Lions paid Stafford coming straight out of Georgia or what the Rams paid Bradford straight out of Oklahoma. It makes way less sense, right? Signing Baker to a deal is a slam dunk there. But obviously, when the rookie quarterbacks make so much less than a veteran guy, that's really where this whole thing gets tough. And we have seen teams benefit immensely from having quarterbacks on rookie deals. Even the Jacksonville Jaguars, remember the teal curtain in 2017? Yeah. They benefited from Bortles, who sucks, right? And we've seen teams benefit from one side of it, but we've never seen a team yet. We've seen teams it's sort of the winner's curse, right? We've seen teams benefit from it, but we've never seen a team turn their back on that quarterback after he had success there. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know if these 3 quarterbacks are the right ones to do it with, but they're kind of at least one of them is kind of on the edge.
Another one that's really interesting that you brought up at the beginning of this before we pressed record was Kyler Murray. And it's interesting because Kyler Murray is one where the Cardinals are not in the same spot as these other 3 organizations. And remember what they did for Kyler Murray, right? They get the number 1 pick. They get rid of Josh Rosen. They basically burn a top 10 overall pick to bring Kyler Murray in. And he hasn't had the success of the others, but I think weirdly, he's just as likely as any of them to get the extension ultimately when it comes time. In large part because of what you said. This is we need to show that the move we made was smart, right? That to me is where this one comes into play.
Yeah, turning your back on Josh Rosen, going with Murray. Obviously, with the head coach too, the head coach is obviously going to want to signal, that he has it in him as well. So yeah, it's a really interesting one because I don't see it. Keim talked about it. I briefly skimmed this over with a Pro Football Talk article, but we understand we have to build around Kyler during this rookie contract. Have they really done it though? I look at this past year, they got Watt for 2 for 28, AJ Green 1 for 6. Last season it was Jordan Phillips 3 for 30, Devon Kennard got 3 for 20. And their highest paid cap hits right now are Chandler Jones at 20 million, had a kind of a bad start to the season last year before getting hurt. He's also holding out. DJ Humphries is 19.9 million. cap hit. And then you have Hopkins at 12.5. Hopkins certainly was. That trade and the contract they gave him did represent, hey, we're in a little bit on this situation. But they have, I mean, you look at what other teams have done, for better or worse, around their rookie quarterback. You look at, we just talked about the Browns, right? Like John Johnson, Troy Hill, Jadeveon Clowney, the whole offensive line, Odell, and like, it's like Kareem Hunt. Like what the Cardinals have done has been puny by comparison. Look at the Ravens, right? Like Earl Thomas, Marcus Peters, Calais Campbell, all these like really good veteran players they put around Lamar. Sammy Watkins is like a backup wide receiver now. Ingram in the run game for a couple of years. Like they went in. And then obviously Buffalo with Diggs and all the the guys that they put around Josh Allen. I think Diggs is specifically one. Have the Cardinals lag behind here? Because I think that they're missing, like, none of it might matter with Cliff and if he can't get them over the hump, but I don't think, like, Hopkins does represent a humongous move here. I don't think I think Watt's going to be good for them, but I don't think that, again, represents a humongous move to sort of supplement a quarterback on a rookie deal. Yeah. Have Arizona done enough?
And neither does AJ Green, right?
Yeah, I mean, AJ Green's slow. I make this reference once every podcast. AJ Green gets out of his cut slower than you do right now.
Yeah, AJ Green did not grade well last year, and if you watched the Bengals, at all, you saw it was not pretty. So that signing, Eric, it's when someone clearly like hasn't done their research and so they make a decision and you can like very clearly see why they make a decision. It's like, oh yeah, I bought this because I recognize the brand, it's like you have no idea what's going on because like you clearly did no research and you bought
it's why I said the Timberwolves are going to trade for Ben Simmons.
Sure. That's a good analogy. Yeah. The signing of Watt and AJ Green feels that way. Now, I'm not saying Watt, I definitely think has the ability to make a lot of big plays in a limited sample size. They paid him a decent amount of money. Now, the AJ Green one, like they're mentioning him as if he's going to be a key part of this offense. I struggle to see that. I would agree, and I think what's going to be very interesting is to see whether Kyler's passing improves this year. He does not. If you look at the quarterback annual, he does not throw over the intermediate middle of the field. And he's not incredibly accurate throwing outside the numbers either. His deep ball has been really, really nice. So there's a lot of room for improvement there. Where you saw improvement last year was his mobility. And that will be interesting because that's not something you can bank on as you saw last year when he got injured. So, man, it's going to be fascinating. I think he has just as good a shot as any of these other guys. And I'll throw this out there too. The fact that he is a great fantasy quarterback will help. I'm telling you right now, like those things are going to matter to a fan base, and that's something that the Cardinals will look at 1,000%. That being said, it's important to remind everyone we're rooting for all these quarterbacks to get an extension. The pro player.
Yeah, we are pro players getting paid, but I also. Just remember, every dollar that's paid to a quarterback can't be paid to another position, like running back, if you're pro running back, for example. So this isn't anti-labor. This is just like pro team building.
You have to do it if you must. Let's do our quarterback rankings. You ready?
Okay, so we're going to go 1 through 10 of veterans, and then veterans can include guys on rookie deals, and then we'll do rookie deal rankings after.
Do that. You can go first.
Do you just want me to rattle off 10?
Rattle them off.
All right, I got Mahomes 1. I have 2 through 4. These are interchangeable, but I will separate them. Brady, Rodgers, Wilson, 2, 3, 4. I left off Deshaun Watson because I don't think he's going to play.
So did I actually.
Josh Allen 5, Dak Prescott 6, Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins tied for 7, 8. Let's go with Matt Ryan at 7, Kirk Cousins at 8. Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson 9, 10.
So can you go over that? I want to make sure I have this down so I can tell where I'm different from you here.
So Mahomes, Brady, Rodgers, Wilson, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson.
we're going to be a little different, thankfully. Thank God.
Who do you have Cousins higher or lower than me?
I have Cousins a little lower than you.
Wait a sec. I thought I'm a hater. I have Cousins at 8, folks. I think he's earned it, don't you think?
No, I don't actually.
Okay.
I'll talk about that in a second. I also left Deshaun Watson off the list because it didn't. Problem is if I ignore that and I put him 2, that just feels wrong. And if I try and factor it in, it also is me doing something that isn't my job. So I left him out. I went Mahomes 1 as well. I went Brady and Rodgers 2 and 3. I thought those were interchangeable. And at number 4, I really struggled here because I do think Russell Wilson should be 4, but man, I put Josh Allen ahead of him. And the reason I put Josh Allen ahead of him is Russell Wilson takes so many sacks, man. He takes so many sacks. I don't think that offense is going to tailor as well to what Russell Wilson does as I think the Bills will this year. And I love what the Bills offense did. I know it's a lot of like supporting cast stuff, but I'm just saying, like, ultimately, when I look back on the season, I believe Josh Allen is going to play better than Russell Wilson. Period. I put Russell Wilson then at 5. I have Dak Prescott at 6.
Wait, we have one flip of 1 bit in the first 6.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. But yeah. All right, I don't hate. Obviously, I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm not surprised there. So Josh Allen 4, Russell Wilson 5. At 6, this one was a little tricky. I ultimately put Prescott there because I think he's a better passer than any of these other guys, and I think that matters a ton, obviously. So I went Prescott. Then I went with, again, and then like having second thoughts looking at it again. So I was really torn here. I wanted to go Lamar Jackson. And I also thought about some of the veterans. I ultimately put Lamar Jackson there, and I felt like that was right. I think Lamar Jackson could have put him higher, and people wouldn't have blinked an eye. I think you could put him lower, and people wouldn't have batted an eye either. But to me, Lamar Jackson deserves to be next. Then I went, and this one is where you might be, hey, like what's going on here? I then went with Ryan Tannehill. And I just had to look at his grading and go, man, he's been really good.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't grade that well this year, then we'll know, right? Like why it was. But he makes great throws. And all of the guys on this list have good schemes. So I went with Ryan Tannehill, and then to round it out, because I believe I'm at 10 here, even though I forgot to actually number these, I went with Baker Mayfield.
Okay.
And I left Cousins off.
I sort of think of Ryan Cousins. I think of Ryan as a slightly better version of Tannehill. And like, I think if he can't blow up with Arthur Smith, then obviously I'm wrong. I think Tannehill has played tremendous the last year and a half. But it's hard for me to get the last part of the Miami part out of my head. I think Cousins is a good quarterback who can't, like, he's just not good enough. That sort of shows you again, like the fact that Mayfield and Jackson probably have a ways to go to earn that deal. And neither one, like when Deshaun signed his deal and Prescott signed his deal and Mahomes signed his deal, I don't think, other than maybe a small hint of Prescott, any of us said, oh no, that's going to be tough for them to keep. You know what I'm saying? Like, none of us said that. Cousins is I think the line right there, right? So the fact that I have Mayfield and Jackson just a hair behind them, like, I don't think, I don't know. It also could just be like, I literally looked at what I put down for the point spreads, and I honestly weigh previous years a little bit more than some people. So like with Tannehill, it was just that, he's not a starter behind Mariota for half the season. Last season was great, but not quite as good as the year before, honestly, if you look at his efficiency and stuff. So like you really have that half year in Tennessee where he was in the conversation. Like if he plays like that in perpetuity, he's in the top 5, right? Like for sure. So I just need to see it one more year. But that brings up sort of an interesting one here. So when we look at rookie contract quarterbacks, I think both of us then have Allen sort of a tier by himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then both of us have Mayfield and Jackson kind of in a cluster after that.
Yep.
Then where are you going? Because I go Herbert by himself as the 4th guy.
Oh,
I do. And I think and maybe I'm scarred from, Allen and Herbert from but I think when you look at like the arm strength, you look at like some of the, the accuracy in the case of Herbert for sure. Last season, you look at like sort of like the ceiling is there for Herbert, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, I think I go Burrow and Murray kind of in a cluster together. And then after that, I go with the 3 top guys drafted. Well, no, sorry. The 3 guys that should have been drafted, top 3. I go with Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, kind of in a cluster there. Lance by himself, Hurts, Darnold, Tagovailoa together, and then Locke.
I think we're the same except in the middle there. And I will have Herbert ahead of those guys, but barely. I think it's a cluster. And I was getting back to the Cousins point. Like one of the things that I think about with these quarterbacks is do we have experience of this guy being a leader of a football team where his team plays well around him? And I just don't think we've seen that from Kirk Cousins. We have not. When I look at, Joe Burrow, and that's clearly something that he's got, and it matters. Now, that is not the only thing. Obviously, the most important thing is that he throws the football really accurately.
Yep.
And so, where you look at Justin Herbert and you go, Justin Herbert had a better pass rating under pressure than he did when he was clean. And you look at Joe Burrow and you go, man, this guy played with nobody last year and was actually pretty damn good. That matters. I think they're right there. And I think Kyler, the reason I would have Kyler just a hair ahead of, I think, both those guys, honestly, is if I look at Kyler Murray, there is something about him that is a cheat code that I'm not sure those other guys have. I think those other guys on average could be better because Kyler's got a little more variance. But Kyler Murray, in terms of ceiling, to me, is above both those guys. And then I'm aligned with you going past that point. Those and the rookies, and then ultimately landing on Drew Lock at the very bottom.
Yeah, Darnold is still on his rookie deal. I sort of put him. I mean, I think with Tua, you're going to have to, like, I'm a sell on Tua until further notice. I put him in sort of that Hurts Darnold camp. But obviously, with all the weapons that Miami is quietly sort of putting themselves in a position to be talked about, at least with Buffalo. I don't know about with Cleveland and Baltimore. But if Tua, I wouldn't be surprised if Tua had a great season this year. But I still think his median projection is pretty low. But Locke is obviously the worst one of the bunch. But it looks like, again, this is interesting, right? Because I know our friend Justice Mosqueda messaged me, I think about a year and a half ago. But he said, it's like, look at when you think about Dak, think about the quarterbacks that are going to be gone pretty soon, right? And we've already seen with Roethlisberger, we saw it with Luck. You sort of Brady, maybe even Rodgers soon. Like once those guys are gone, and you're looking at, and then Matt Ryan, and you're looking at the crop of quarterbacks, it's going to be Mahomes, Wilson, seems to hit on Allen here, Prescott, and then it's a bunch of guys who are sort of either or, right? Mm-hmm. And like we look at this quarterback group, and I mean, we got to see at least, if you're a Chiefs fan, it makes you kind of happy. But you look at this group of quarterbacks, you need to see at least 2 or 3 hit, right, to get us into a position where we've been the last like 10 years in the NFL, where there's a lot of good quarterbacks and a lot of like undisputed ones.
I'm not worried about it. I think there will be. I think obviously both of us would take Allen as the guy leading that pack with a chance to do it. But there will be a couple that I'm confident are going to make continue to progress and kind of push that a little bit. And I think this rookie class particularly exciting as well. Let's close it out here. So I was just going to tell my story. Do you want to do? I forgot to ask if you had a recommendation for this week.
Reading this book. It's called Perelman's Refusal, a novel. It's by Filippi Zawati. It is a book that I got delivered to me by the American Mathematical Society. Grishri Perelman is the person who solved the Poincare conjecture, which was one of the Hilbert problems. I believe the first Hilbert problem that was solved. So the $1 million math problems, I think there were 6 or 7 of them. But he, a Russian mathematician who was reclusive, didn't want to talk to anybody, wanted to refuse the Fields Medal. And so this was kind of like a part, it's kind of like a part, part embellishment, part drawn from a real story of a mathematician trying to befriend Perelman and to get him to go and accept this award. The Fields Medal is sort of the Nobel Prize of mathematics because it is alleged that Mittag Leffler, another famous mathematician, slept with Fields' wife. And so there's no Fields Medal in mathematics. And so this is a discussion of a guy who didn't want it, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, reading about some of the really brilliant mathematicians and how they do the things they do, they are built different.
It makes you appreciate that I'm a relatively normal one.
Yeah, well,
relatively.
Story for another day. No, you definitely are. Okay, here's my story. Yesterday, this is a recommendation. If you're in Vegas, go to Stadium Swim. If you like betting on sports, it's not like a revelation. It's awesome. We went there. You have the 800-foot television. You can see it from all the pools. It's awesome. So there with a few buddies, and one of the cool things is they have blackjack tables down there that you can play. So I don't know, maybe 4:00, go down there and start playing some blackjack. Buddy of mine goes on an absolute heater. This guy is Steph Curry in a gym by himself. Just absolutely cannot miss. To the point where he has a hand where he's split 3/8, I believe, has doubled down twice. And because his initial bet was so large, he needed a couple of his other guys that were there to stake him so that he could keep betting, and he wins this entire hand. So it's euphoria. We're only playing for about an hour and a half, and up an enormous amount of money. The Suns Clippers game is about to tip. So we go, look, it's all Suns, baby. That's all it is. There's Suns are the better team. Chris Paul just had a terrible game. He's coming back, playing in Los Angeles again against his former team. Let's go Suns. But we basically take all of this blackjack winning from a trio of us and roll it into Suns money line. So we have, I'm not going to put the exact number of thousands of dollars riding on this game, but it is many. And we're going to dinner, and all we can think about is the Suns game. So we're checking the score. We're at another great place if you're in Vegas. I don't know if you haven't been recently, but Carbone at Aria is awesome. They're a fantastic restaurant. So we're there. It's a great restaurant, and all we can do is watch this game. The Suns are up double digits, and all of a sudden start losing it right in the middle of dinner. None of us can handle it. We're we got to close out. We got to go get somewhere to watch this game. So we do that. We run off to this bar to watch this game. And the sweat, Eric, was absolutely incredible. Of course, when they win the game, the celebration took my voice quite literally. And let's just say that going to cash out those tickets at Circa was an absolute.
How many forms did you guys have to fill out?
One of our buddies was the one that primarily put most of the money down, and he had to fill out
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Because I remember when we cashed our draft props, they were like, okay, all right, sir. It was like,
yeah.
Yeah.
We sent one of the guys who had placed by far the most on the game and the most over the course of the weekend had already filled them out. So while we were like closing up the pool, we sent him in to place all the bets. So he just had all these tickets, and it was black. So like obviously the celebration ensued, and you got to give back, to the economy, right?
Yeah, you get the wealth. It sounds like you guys gave back, which is good.
To redistribute the wealth. It's very important. So did that. That's why I have no voice. So in lieu of a recommendation, you get the story of how I sound like a complete idiot. But that was our show, College Football Preview Magazine. If you did not go get it, go get it. It's $7.99. I guarantee you it is a great deal. We will see you all on Wednesday. Peace.